You have to think in terms of systems. If you want to get anywhere in any line of work, anywhere in this world, systems are the number one thing you have to think about. And to do that, you have to think of what a system even is. So what is a system, and why do you have to think in one? A system we could define as any repetition anywhere. What do we mean by repetition? The same thing occurring in several different incidences. So by system, we mean an identity indifference, or the same thing occurring in different places. If something is a system, it's reusable because you have the same thing used in different places. If something is a system, it's rethinkable because you have the same thing that you can think in different contexts. If something is a system, it is a place where you can go to get a desirable output by putting in the same set of initial inputs. In the home, a kitchen is the foremost system, and for this reason, people would call early kinds of learning how to be a homemaker home economics. Economics comes from the Greek oikoimene, meaning to manage. So it's the management of the home. But this management in the ancient Greek extended to the whole of the home. And so really the whole of the home was a system. But today we don't quite think in these terms because of the denigration of certain groups of society. But sticking with the kitchen, if the home is a system and the kitchen is a system, well, what are our inputs and outputs? The inputs are the things we use every time we cook, our utensils, our amenities, and our appliances. But there are also things we don't have to always put in, things that won't repeat every single time, new foodstuffs that we buy, for instance. All of these together are the inputs that, when repeated through repeated action, create new outputs. This makes the kitchen a system because there is identity indifference. If you think in this way, you can model your whole life just on what you do in your kitchen. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive and a little bit almost redundant, almost a little bit stupid, but give me a moment. You could prep all of your meals, for instance. This is the first way to really think in a system. If you know that what you do in your kitchen is simply combine inputs and outputs, then you don't have to do that every single day. You could do that job all at once at one time of the week. Instead of doing every single thing, repeating it over and over, you can condense that repetition into one act of identity, one batch cooking. That is thinking in systems. This is the second level of thinking in systems. Once we've realized that a system consists in identity indifference, the second question is, what can we do to manipulate this realization? In the case of batch cooking, we condense repetition into a single act of identity, a single act of cooking. But what about all the other things we have to do in our lives that aren't so simply reproducible as the act of cooking? I could give you another example with the very things I'm recording with right now. I am using a light that I also use to record piano videos that I post on a TikTok account. This light is always out, and because it's readily accessible, I can pull it to the side, put it right here, and begin filming a video like this one. I'm sitting on a bench that I also use for storage right now. Why do I do that? Because I can pull it out and record a video like this one. Instead of each thing having its own singular identity, it can now function in different contexts. So in this case, instead of collapsing difference into one identity, we expand identity into many different contexts. The light is always seated by my piano and usually serves the piano recording function, but is at just the right place for me to use several other things at the same time. So we have two new ways now we can think in systems. We can condense repetition and we can expand identity. What is the point in doing any of this? Well, you save time. You don't have to do the same things that you would have otherwise been doing every single day. You also don't have one object with simply one use. You free up space just thereby. So one thing allows us to save time, another thing allows us to save space. But where else can we take this? Where else might thinking in systems really benefit us? I think we can think of the whole of our body and our mind as a system. That's to say, we should think of neither one nor the other as dissociated from the other, as Herr Descartes does. We are not a mind-body dualism, but a singular mind-body composite. As such, the acts we take, or the different acts we take, constitute one identity. This is another way of saying the famous adage, you are what you repeatedly do. However, if that is true, then we can simultaneously manipulate repetition or expand identity. If we condense repetition, we could do a lot of the things we'd want to do every day all at once. This is the difference between practicing for a 5-hour unit on a Sunday or practicing for 1 hour every day, Monday through Friday. The question is, which is better for the whole system? If we're interested only in batching the tasks and saving time, clearly the 5-hour practice is better. However, if we know at the same time that what constitutes our ability to function as a system is repetition indifference, then we may not be so interested or so tempted in this. We might even say that instead of practicing for one 5-hour window, during which we'd get fatigued, upset with ourselves, and unable to even complete the whole 5 hours, it might be better to practice for just 10 to 20 minutes every day. That is a thinking in a system. What makes this 10 to 20 minutes better than 1 hour every day to get to our 5-hour total? Well, we are practicing, that's identity, doing the same thing every day, but indifference. Showing up every day despite how much energy we have. Keeping that on our minds despite whatever else comes to and fro. Because the whole system is the constitution of an identity indifference, by simply doing a task more than once, we repurpose the identity we had before in new context. That's to say, we form a stronger identity by doing the same thing multiple times, even if it's done for a shorter period of time. That is thinking in systems. There are some caveats here. Even if this is an effective method, it's very difficult to practice. Why? If you want to do the same things every day, you're going to have a hard time getting all of them done. You have to pay your bills, you have to do your job or go to school, which, for all intents and purposes, is your job. You have to take care of those you love, keep up a good name, be a good person. That's not something that happens on its own. That alone takes work. To do other things with your time, to read intentionally across several different genres, to practice skills that matter the most to you, that is something that is over and above all of that. To do that systemically, or some might say systematically, is no easy feat. I don't always practice what I preach, and it's not easy to. Life gets in the way and finds its own system for you. But in the end, that, I think, is what makes system thinking so powerful. If you know that life and system are constituted out of identity and difference, and that there are two essential things you can do, condense repetition or expand identity, then you always know exactly what's going wrong with your systems. Either one identity is getting too condensed, or one repetition is getting too expanded. That's two things that could happen. What do I mean by an identity getting too condensed? This could be personal to you. You are identifying yourself in one unique way that doesn't allow you to do all the things you want. That's your own personal identity. Or you think that one thing you're doing isn't expandable to other sets of things you'd like to do. For instance, I'll sometimes get it in my head that I can't really go work at my laptop computer or my desktop computer because one is for one thing and another is for another. If I'm too tired, I'm not ready to work on that other thing. This is an attachment to an identity because I've identified my objects as for one specific thing. But what does systems thinking tell us to do? Not to identify them with one thing, but to pluralize them across differences. Maintaining the notion of difference when you feel yourself getting too trapped in identity is one way that you can always make sure that you maintain your systems. Another thing you can do is get too caught up in all the differences of life. You might wake up at 7 a.m. in the morning, or maybe 6 a.m. like I did today. Then you have to talk with your advisor. Then you have a class right after. Then you have a book you have to read. Then you have another class after that. Then you hopefully will have some lunch that you meal prepped the day before. And then you have another class until 5:30. And then you feel when you get home that you have so many things to say that you need to put them somewhere, but you don't know where to put them. You remember that across all those differences, you have an identity that's fixed in a system. Neither of these two thought processes are easy. It's much easier to feel that what life throws at you just disrupts you, just sets you on whatever course it has for you, like Noah's Ark on the open seas. For 40 days and 40 nights, you may feel yourself thrown about wherever the winds take you. But you will find dry land if you remember that you already have it, because there are already systems in motion in your life. Every time you go for a bag of chips, you're reactivating a system. You feel the desire, that's identity. In new contexts, wherever they are, that's difference. Those come together and you reach for the chip. To break that is really fucking hard. I know, I'm trying to lose weight right now. It's not easy. When you feel that hunger pang, you've got to reach for something else. That's also not easy. You might just get caught up in the difference, feel so tired from all the different things you do that you want to reach in that identified feeling of hunger for the same thing you always do, because it brings you comfort against all those differences. That's temptation, and that's the hardest thing to stop. If you have any thoughts or questions on what it is to think in systems, I recommend you look at John Dewey's text on social psychology, Deleuze's text on empiricism and subjectivity, which inspired this video, and Hume's treatise on human nature and inquiry into human understanding. These texts concern habit, which is the fundamental system. If you want a more cerebral take on all of this, think about Kant's architectonic in the Critique of Practical Judgment. Any other questions, shoot me an email at mr.amazing.yt@gmail.com or drop a comment below. This is Mr. Amazing. Thank you for watching.